So, welcome to Beauty of Colors podcast, Ebony. It's great to finally have you on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad we finally had the chance to get together and do this.
You're very welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to become an author.
Well, of course, my name is Ebony, and I am a wellness and a life coach. I was actually inspired to be an author, I feel like, from when I was younger. So I remember in elementary school, we would have what was called like this Young Authors Club. And I was involved in that club, and I would write books and compete in competitions and win some, lose some. And so I think I've always loved writing. What happened is that as I kind of went through life, that passion just left, like, being an adult, working, being busy. It kind of came back around to me actually to write. And so I feel like I've always wanted to be an author and write, and then the opportunity just came back to me.
It's usually when life hits, things that you want to do kind of put on hold because life gets at you and all of those things kind of come back to you, the things that you love to do when you're a child.
Absolutely. And I could definitely see that. Like I said, I hadn't thought about it before I actually started to write. I hadn't even thought about it. I was like, oh, I know I always journal, things like that, but it actually came back to me as like this was actually just like a vision board, this book. I put it up on a vision board one day and I said, well, this is something that I hope to do. And I honestly, I left it alone. Like I didn't think about it. I didn't stress over it. I was like, one day, whenever, I didn't know it would be as soon as it happened, but one day I'll do it. And it came back to me full circle, definitely.
So, can you talk a little bit about your book? It's 20 Beautiful Women. How does it inspire other women?
Well, 20 Beautiful Women is actually a compilation book, basically. It's a co-author book. So it's a book that I co-author with 19 other women. And so it basically just talks about our journeys. It's there to inspire, to talk about struggles, triumphs, grief, joy, all of those things that you kind of journey through as a woman, but not just a woman, just as a person. And so the inspiration came, like I said, from a vision board. So basically, the way that this book is authored is that it comes out in volumes. The publisher does it in volumes. And so I had seen a volume some years in past, and I said, I'm going to literally clip out this book. And I was like, that is amazing. Women get together and they share their stories. And I put it on the board. Like I said, I left it alone. I didn't even think about it. Well, come around, there was the next volume being printed, and it's actually the last volume that the publisher said that they will ever do. And so I was like, I have to at least be a part of this in some way. And so that's how this actually came about for me to be able to share my story with on a platform with 19 other women was a beautiful experience.
So, why is the title 20 Beautiful Women and not 10,000 or 1 million beautiful women?
The 20 Beautiful Women is actually because there's 20 of us in the book, basically. So it's myself and 19 other women. And the 20 is just for the actual number of women that are in the book. And the beauty is just the inner part, just as well as the outer part, but mainly the inner, right? We share a lot about our pain, our trauma, but then also the process of overcoming, not allowing circumstances to define you, but that you are able to actually define yourself. And I think that that's actually the beauty in the 20 Beautiful Women.
So, tell us about your chapter.
Well, my chapter actually is a personal experience about a challenging time in my life. Emotionally, it goes into my experience with fear, with my inner self critic, and how hard it was for me to overcome just myself, really, right? How sometimes, you are your hardest critic. You are the thing that's actually standing in your way. And so in my chapter, I talk about a transition that I experienced in my life and how it challenged me, but at the same time, it was so needed for me because it was a space that I actually felt like I'm finding myself in this space. It was the first time that I felt like I had really not actually had first time that I actually not the first time that I had gone through things, but I would say mentally the way that I experienced this, it was a lot different. It was a lot of self-doubt, it was a lot of fear, it was a lot of anxiety, just so many different things that I had experienced that up until that point I never had, and I just felt like I needed to share that piece that it didn't define me.
So, what actually got you to this point? Did you have to go to a psychiatrist? Did you say your affirmations? How did you get to just be yourself?
Well, at that time, for me,
Mhm.
I am a very, very knowledgeable. So I'm very mind. I like to read, I like to learn. That's like my strong suit, right? So at that time, what I actually did was a lot of work. I actually started going into the library, right? I started to learn about like, I'm having so much self-doubt. Like, where is this coming from? Because up until that point, I had done really, really well. And it wasn't that I wasn't doing well at that point, it was that I was wanting to do something different. And the fear of coming out of something, the fear of making a change, I think was so detrimental to me that it just caused so much in me. So I began to actually go to the library. I said, what is going on inside of me? And I started checking out books. I started reading. I started doing affirmations. I started to ask myself those challenging questions. You know, what are you really, really afraid of? And then also my narrative, like what narrative is playing. I had always grown up like, well, you go to school, you do this, you do that, and I had done really well in there, right? Like I think to the outside succeeding really, really well, but still felt like I don't know if this is like I feel like I don't know if this is what I'm wanting. And just having that fear to make the change because I had followed the model so well and I had done so well in school. I had done so well in my work environments. I was in leadership. I was doing all of these things, but there was still this something is not there. Something is missing. And so I had to do a lot of work. And then in continuation, further on beyond that, right? Like you think you reach this point, like I did all this work, I'm here. Then eventually I did begin to see a coach. I did begin to see a therapist. That part of it is not in the book because at the time that I wrote the book, I hadn't gone to do that yet. So I still like to share that as part of my journey because I feel like that's also an important piece to actually get a coach myself. Like I'm a coach, but I get coached. So those are some of the things that I actually did.
So, how long did that process take you? Was it like years, or was it kind of like months? How long did it?
You know what? I'm going to say it's ongoing, right? When I did that process, what I would do is I would go online and just listen to positive speeches. So, like any type of like compilation, like anything that I could just find on YouTube, I would play it in my ear, literally working. That's all I would hear over and over again. I would take sticky notes and just write out things. And so I had these sticky notes kind of everywhere. Um, it was a consistent process until I feel like I actually started to see some change. I would say um, a few months maybe is when I started to see like some of the changes occur, like for me in my life, for me in my attitude, for me in my thoughts. Because in the beginning, if you're having this self-doubt, this criticalness, this negative feeling, it doesn't just go away, right? So I had to learn how to hear those things and know that, okay, that's not the truth. Here's the truth. So basically, what I would do, I would say, well, if I had something, inner part of me that said, well, who are you to want to do something different? I would actually have to challenge that and say, well, I'm this. I deserve to be able to choose what it is that I want. My life is not my parents' life. My life is not society's life. My life is not anybody's life. And so I would say for me to actually start to feel some changes, start to believe those things took me a couple of months. But then I feel like it was still an ongoing process. I feel like for me it's been never ending, because I feel like you reach a point where that was one layer, right? That was the first layer. As you begin to go into different things, you have another layer that you have to go into. And so to see some initial change, I would say it took me maybe 6 months, 4 months to just consistently. And the key for me was consistency. Like it was an everyday thing. Journaling, writing, sticky notes in my ear. It was consistent every day.
Oh, that's discipline actually. So why was it important for you to tell your story in this way?
I think that it was important for me to tell my story this way because people that know me know that I'm super private, right? And I feel like for a majority of my experience, I have been a super perfectionist, right? My protection mechanism. My mom passed when I was young, and my grandmother passed. And so I had a lot of immediate death in my family. And so a lot of that perfection was protection. And so it was important for me to be vulnerable, for me to say, hey, I know that I'm not the only person going through this. And I wanted to be honest. And I felt like that honesty was a part of my healing, to be able to be vulnerable in that way, because I don't think that up until sharing this book in this way with people that I don't know, I had been able to be very vulnerable in that way. So it was important for me to be vulnerable so that the reader or the woman or the man, whoever would pick up the book, can say, oh my gosh, like I can recognize that thought. I hear that sometimes, but that negative thought or that doubtful thought or that critical thought is not what defines you. You actually have the power within yourself to know the truth about who you are, what you deserve, and what you're actually worthy of.
Wow. Sometimes we just have to relearn again how to love ourselves, because what we've taught over the years is so totally different. So it's kind of like a rebirth process, and
Yes.
getting to know yourself and getting to accept who you are. So what was the hardest part to write about in the book? What gave you the most challenge?
The hardest part was the most important part that you asked me about. It was actually mm, being vulnerable. Sharing those parts and then having to go back and like relive them a little bit. Sometimes when you go through challenging things, you're like, I hope I never go back to that place. Like, you have that. But when I had to go back, um, that was the hardest part. But it was also a part that made me feel very grateful that I had been able to have the awareness, resources, tools to be able to learn how to, move forward and not be stuck in that place. So the most important part was actually the hardest part. And that was the vulnerability, going back, reliving it and sharing it and putting myself out there.
Okay, so what do you hope that your readers would take away from your writings, and not only from your writings, but from the other women in the book?
I would hope that they would take away, first, comfort in knowing that you are not alone, that we all actually go through things, we all have challenges, and comfort in just knowing that you can get through those challenges. I would like for them to take strength as something that they can pull away from it. The strength to change, the strength to evolve, the strength to believe in themselves, and the strength to move forward. And with that, some hope and some bravery, because it takes a lot of courage to do that. It takes a lot of courage to look in the mirror, to challenge yourself, your beliefs, and hope. You know, I think one of the biggest things is hope. Hope that there's always this possibility for things to get better. Sometimes we don't know when it will get better. Sometimes we don't know how it will get better, but that there is a hope that things can change for the better for you. And actually, one of the things that I used to write down for myself is that a simple thing, it gets better. And I will post it. It gets better. If I couldn't think about anything else, I would just say, it gets better. When I didn't have a prayer to pray, when I felt like I'm exhausted, when I felt like, what is going on with me? It gets better. And that's all I told myself consistently. And if I wasn't in a space where I could say it, or I would write it down, I would put it in my notes in my phone. It gets better. And I would just read that to myself, that there's always this possibility for things to change for the better.
Okay, so it was like a little affirmation for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So in retrospect, what advice would you give yourself then, knowing what you know now?
Oh man, at that space, I was not, I wasn't in the wellness space. I wasn't in the coaching space. I would honestly say to myself, I was very knowledge centered and not heart centered at that point, which was great, right? Like that was still needed for me to kind of move through the process. But I would say to myself, be gentler. You know, I think at that time I kind of hit it like I had hit, I kind of approached myself like a task, like, okay, breathe this, do this, do this. I think that I would say be a little bit more gentler, and I would encourage myself to um, reach out for resources and help in different ways outside of myself, whether that is therapy, whether that is coaching, whether that is like a group experience. Like one of the things that from my book, the feedback that I kind of got is that people love the space to be able to share and talk about things like this, because a lot of times we don't. A lot of times women don't. We have to be strong. We have to do family. We have to work. Like we're supposed to be like superwoman, right? And depending on what culture you come from, a lot of times women of color, and myself speaking specifically as a Black woman, we don't talk a lot about those hard emotions. We don't talk about, it's like you keep going, you keep moving, and that's just it. And so that's what I did. I created like a healing collective, a space just to be able to receive support and know that you're not alone, and a place for growth, for you to feel safe to grow, because all the time, depending on where you come from as well, when you make a change, when you grow, when you start to set boundaries, when you say, well, I want my life to look different, that is not always acceptable in some communities and families as well. So you can feel alone on your journey. And so I would say get support, be gentle, and heart centered, opposed to so much leading from the top of my head, basically.
But would you say that the circumstances that you have been through, would you say that it has made you a stronger person? It has brought out some characteristics that you never thought that you had in you. Would you want to relive that again, that the same circumstances, or would you say no to that if somebody asked you to relive that circumstance?
That's a hard one. I would say I definitely think that what I went through made me so much more stronger. And it made me not just stronger, but I think it made me so much more like aware of myself. I think that it actually helped me find my real self, and not a self that was built on what I thought it should have been like or what was told to me. Like it's like a rebirth, but it also feels like a returning, right? It's like those passions for writing when I was younger, those things like started to come back to me, right? And they were like, hey, I want to, like they started showing up for me in my life. Would I want to relive them? Now that's the question right there. Would I want to relive them? If I had what I have now, but at the time it felt like at the time it was so detrimental that I was like, ooh. But knowing what I know now, I know that you get through it when you feel like you won't. You know, you get through it when you feel like you can't. You get through it when there doesn't seem like there's any like it doesn't make sense. Like, you get through it throughout those times that you feel like, I don't know how this is ever like there were days I was like, I don't know how this is ever gonna get better. I don't even know, like I was kind of like, I don't even know where this came from. Like, but I'm not gonna say because I'm not one that's like I like I'm possibly, but knowing what I know now, possibly. There's a possibility.
So, if someone was interested in being involved, how could they get involved with your work? Because you do coaching. So
Absolutely.
how would they get involved with your work and get in contact with you and the resources that you offer?
Absolutely. Um, One of the best ways I would say is you can go to my website. I talked a little bit earlier about the Women's Collective, which is one of my projects that I'm working on now. And it is basically a monthly meeting for women to gather and to discuss. And it's actually called It's Okay, Sis. And so through the power of okay, which okay is all is well. So that's how we use it. It's okay. Those simple little words carry so much power. And so that's one thing. And then I also am a coach as well. And so they can go to my website at Eboni Kris, EBONIKRIS.com, and click on the Healing Collective and join our waiting list. We do monthly things, have a different topic. It is not like mental health or anything like that. I just call it a wellness. It's not therapy. It's none of those things. And it's just a place for women to gather, to learn, to support, and coaching. Either way, you can reach out to me at info@ebonikris.com. So info at EBONIKRIS.com.
So the healing collection that you have for women, is it virtual or is it where the place that you are right now?
It is actually virtual.
Okay.
I'm in Los Angeles, and no, we do not meet in person. It is a virtual experience, and yeah, you each month there's a different topic, and women get to join and be a support for each other.
Mhm.
And like I said, we use okay because even though okay is so small, it
Mhm.
carries so much power. You think about a little kid and they're crying, and what does mom or dad or whoever they rub them on the back is going to be okay. And even as an adult, as a woman,
Mhm.
sometimes we need our family, our friends, our sister to reach out and say, hey, it's okay, sis. You growing, it's okay, sis. You having a hard day, it's okay, sis. And it is that permission to be where you are without feeling the need to be anything else or anywhere else except for where you are. And that brings, from what I found, so much power into your life from my personal experience and from people that I actually coach.
So what can the readers expect from?
The readers can expect honesty, they can expect my vulnerability. Like I said, I actually shared a lot, and I talk a lot about like the self-doubt and the thoughts. So I actually talk, I actually share specifically like some things like well, who do the like the critical thoughts. Who do you think you are to want to do XYZ? You know, you should be grateful to have all that you have. Those were things that played to me simply just for me feeling like I want to make a change in my life possibly. So they can expect honesty, truth. Well, truth is honesty, but I feel like they can expect it to be an honest experience, but then also some tools that they can pull out from it as well.
So with the healing collection for women, when the women do get together virtually, do every person have a topic that they do bring to the discussion, or is it a topic that's planned for the month and everybody talk about it?
It is already a planned topic, basically. So one week, and it's not always something that is emotional things. It can be like procrastination. You know, a lot of us deal with procrastination. Um, so each topic is kind of pre-chosen, um, discussion, some tools to take along to, you know, work with that as well.
So if someone is listening to this podcast, where would they go to purchase your book?
They can purchase my book at Barnes and Nobles. And the easiest way I tell people to do it is just go to Barnes and Nobles, put in the search Eboni Kris, EBONIKRIS, and the book will come up.
Talk about the coaching that you do. What is your website address?
It is Eboni Kris, well, www.ebonikris, EBONIKRIS.com.
Are there any final thoughts?
I would just say that if you are going through a challenging situation right now, be it whatever in your life, know that that circumstance, although at this moment it might feel like it's defining you, know that it doesn't, and that you have the power within yourself, even though you might not feel like it at this time, to get through it, and to keep with you that there's always this possibility for things to change for the better on your behalf, and know that it gets better. So that's what I would leave the people today.
Sounds great. We all need encouragement to let us know that we're not alone, and there's always people that we can talk to and people that we can, learn from, experiences from. Ebony, it was great to have you on the show.
It was so great to be here. I am so glad that we had a chance to connect and do this. And thank you for all that you do as well, and creating a platform to share encouragement for others. So it was my pleasure to be here.